One of my most triumphant memories. I think it was whenever Chris Long's last year was. So I think that was like 2006, fall of 2006, that football season, I believe. We were on the road at Maryland, and this was a year, I guess, in which the teams were fairly evenly matched, which I guess means that Maryland was also very bad that year. And we were playing at Maryland, and it was a very close game. So the football was very exciting, and at one point, the band director from Maryland walked over to us and said, "You need to turn your microphones off, your speakers on the band. It's sort of poor form." And Dr. Pease pointed to the only speakers around. He said, "You see what direction those are pointed?" And the guy said, "Oh yeah, they're pointed towards the band." It's like, that's so they can hear me over the noise of all you damn terrapins. But in other words, we were playing so powerfully that the Maryland band was embarrassed to be in the same stadium as us. And that was a game that I really felt like there was a great energy in the stadium, and I feel like as members of the band, we made some small contribution. Usually games are not very close when you're a fan of Virginia football. This game was close. So not only was sort of the football filled with adrenaline, but the give and take between the crowd and the band and the football team. It was just a really exciting way of how music can contribute substantially to an experience. And it's also, obviously sort of a gratifying feeling to discover that one's band is so powerful that on the other side of the stadium they're just weeping in shame and jealousy. That's how I characterize the experience, obviously.
Right. And I enjoyed big moments like that too, certain games that stick out in your memory, or, fun major events like band prom. But I think also for me, just thinking back, some of the stuff that had the biggest impression that I enjoyed the most was just the feeling of week after week watching a new show come together. And you hit the form or you play the music right, and you just kind of have that moment with however other many hundreds of people are on the field, like, yes, we just did this. We all managed to work together, and I think it's a very gratifying feeling. I think that the sense of accomplishment of a group of like-minded people working really hard and being able to achieve something really cool like that, a really good end product. I think that's actually probably my favorite memories. Big moments are fun, but knowing that consistently it was something that I enjoyed the day-to-day of for the most part, I think that had the biggest impression on me.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, the CMB is the biggest group that they have ever played in and probably will ever be a part of, musically speaking. And, the first time that, especially if that first time happens to be in a resonant space like U-Haul, the first time that the band comes together and starts to play, you just sit there and think, wow, this is a big sound. Not always very pretty sound if one is standing next to some of the higher woodwinds, or if one is out of tune, as one frequently is in the trumpet section. But as Maria said, the sense of common purpose, enterprise that sort of comes together. I think especially in the early days when you realize just what kind of a group this is and the talent of the people who are involved here. I mean, the people in the CMB, these are the people who were pretty serious about music in high school. These are people who could have pursued music professionally, but instead they decided to do something else. But music is still a big, important part of their lives. And discovering how many people there are like that around you, it was on a almost daily basis for me very inspiring.
People who have not only have the potential, but who come together and work hard and actualize that consistently. It's very, very exciting to be a part of that.
I spent band camp studying and practicing and rising early and sleeping early as well, and really sort of engaging in a model of Jeffersonian good behavior. What about you, dear?
I did not. Any of those things.
Like at one
I believe
point,
we covered my first year, I think we covered the door to the director's hotel room with empty pizza boxes. Like, we just duct taped them up over the doorway. I'm really not sure what inspired that.
The only analog I had was my high school band experience, where literally the chaperones would patrol the halls at night, and they would put little pieces of tape on the door so they could tell if anything had been opened.
Really?
And you go from that seat, yeah, it was pretty obnoxious. It was sort of funny to be in sort of an unstructured unsupervised environment, which everyone handled with great responsibility, no doubt. So band camp was a lot of fun. I think it's really kind of cool to be in an environment where you don't just make music with people, but you also spend all your time with those people, and it really helps. Band camp only a week long, but this was true for me as someone new to the university, and I imagine it was true for some of the first years as well. By the time you get to grounds for your first week of classes, you've already spent a lot of time with a lot of university students, and you feel connected, I think, to the place, and you have a network of support that maybe some other people don't have. I guess what I would say as an example of that, I think this is actually probably my favorite memory of the Cavalier Marching Band. Happened very early. I think it was during band camp, maybe one of the first couple of days. We went to we had some picnic at the field, at the park,
Yep.
down by the law school, and at one point some benefactor, I don't remember if it
I think
was.
that was Leonard. Was that Leonard Sanders?
It may have been some
Yeah.
event memorializing former university provost and all around badass Leonard Sandridge. But we had this picnic, and it was fine, mediocre hot dogs, etc. But then at the end of the picnic, when we wanted to honor our guest, Dr. Pease said, let's gather around and sing the good old song. And I had never sung the good old song before, and so I was like, well, we're a band. Why are we singing? But we link arms and we sing the good old song. I mean, we come from old Virginia. I mean, those are stirring words, and seeing the way that somebody like me, who would literally come to the band a few days ago, would be welcomed into a community like that, and seeing the sort of the genuine affection and pride that people have, not just for the band, but for the university, was very compelling. And it was a really great way to come to the university, because there was never any doubt in my mind that this is where I belonged.
Mm-hmm.
And the CMB was a pretty big part of that from the very beginning. And so I think it's a great way to be welcomed into the university community. There was some Gloria Estefan stuff that I thought was really good. At one time we played Bill Chase's "Bring It On," which I thought was really good. I will not sing it for you.
That's probably the best.
I'm gonna go get my horn and start playing it.
No.
That'll be good. So the nice thing about the Pease and Cook approach to marching band is very brass heavy.
Yeah.
So as a trumpet player, you always have lots to do, and so I think really almost all the shows were good. My one abiding regret about spending my first year at Oberlin instead of at the university is that during the 2005 season there was an Earth, Wind, and Fire show, and I am all about the Earth, Wind, and Fire, but I never got to play Earth, Wind, and Fire as a member of the CMB. It's sort of a sad thing. That's my favorite show for which I was not present. I hear it was good.
I really enjoyed the show that had Thriller and some of the dance medley stuff in it, because Richard Vigilant,
bard of the dance floor.
That was just, I mean, I was and I am friends with Richard, and he just had such a blast putting moves together, and he was telling us about how he was like in his tiny cramped dorm apartment
in
whatever
Faulkner.
Or Vice or wherever he was that year, and he's like, yeah, I watched the music video over and over, and I was like trying to get down the moves and see how it fit with our arrangement, and he just had so much fun. And I remember, I think that was a show that we had a bit of a shorter time window to learn, but even with that sort of, I guess, Russian sense of urgency, just having a blast learning that, and everybody was so excited and having fun and pretending to be Michael Jackson.
Yeah, 250 band geeks on a field trying to be Michael Jackson is a funny sight, sort of objectively speaking, but certainly a fun part to be around. I really think that was sort of the apotheosis of my career as a dancer, was the choreography that our drill instructors, for sure. Richard Vigil and Theo Smith, I mean, they're sort of one unit as far as dance excellence goes. I mean, those guys really knew how to bring it, and it was a lot of fun. Their energy is just infectious, and I don't know, but I don't find it hard to believe that those characters have their successors in the band today, and there's just so many different talents in the band. I have absolutely no talent when it comes to dancing, and so had you requested me choreograph it. My wife testified this.
Yeah.
You know, had you asked me to do something like that, I would have laughed and then probably cried. But you know, there are people there who had that skill set, and so I think that the things when we could dance, those were very good shows, especially because you know you're wearing a hat and a cape, so no one can see you making a fool of yourself.
Well, also
Unless Kirby comes up with this camera and starts filming you, which I managed to avoid for the most part.
speaking of that and like your people's perception and what they see you doing from that same show, there are definitely still pictures on Flickr that Rachel Beaton took, where you know we're practicing in the morning before the game and everybody was in like shirts under sweatshirts and sweatpants and their band shoes, and it was Saturday morning.
People were rough.
Yeah, and it looks rough. There's one of me that I'm like trying to dance and making a ridiculous face, and I'm clearly not all the way awake yet in the day. But then, you know, coming up later and when you're in your real uniform and you're fully awake and whatnot, it looks awesome. It looks awesome, but in sweatpants it's a little rough. Maybe not a favorite one in particular, but it is fun thinking of that, like the things that we just tossed together because as we were just getting started, not every, you know, little tune had a visual to it yet, or, you know, new tunes were added as we went along and we're like, we need to do something. And turning on, you know, ESPN or whatever and seeing a game or going to a game now that we're back in Charlottesville and seeing the band do some of the same things or versions of the same thing. It's just funny to be like, you know, so-and-so thought that up 2 minutes before we started doing this, or, yeah, we tried that once and then it became this, and, you know, I guess just seeing the things that we just did at the time and they're now, you know, things that everybody does and are taught. The guillotine was probably the hardest thing we did.
And then there was
people getting smacked when we first were starting to do. I remember Tasky just having to tell people, like, do not hit your neighbor with your horn. Not because you'll hurt them, but because you'll hurt the horn. And they're
the guillotine is when, you know, one goes over, the other goes down, and then,
yeah.
you know, and vice versa, and it's sort of a hazardous activity. Just like the little flourishes, there's what I like to call the vigilant handshake that occurs during some of the drum breaks, where, you know, you start going like that.
Yeah, you look ridiculous. Don't do that.
That's sort of the story of my life, but lots of little things like that, because when you're in the stands, you really have to think of something to keep yourself amused when you're playing the, you know, first down.
Or anything with the cape.
Yeah, the cape is
Any
a fun
visuals
accessory for sure.
That is fun, because unless you either have a more exciting life than me or a much weirder one, there are not many opportunities in life to really wear a cape in public.
You asked my favorite bowl game memory is. I'm going to tell you what my least favorite bowl game memory was. The Gator Bowl, which I believe was, it was early 2007 after the 2006 football season, which was a pretty good season for us. We did pretty well, and we went to Jacksonville, Florida for the Gator Bowl. And there was a parade beforehand, which was a lot of fun. We stayed in a relatively nice hotel. Rehearsal demands were relatively minimal. Everything was going great. At the game, we did quite well. We played Texas Tech, featuring a then unknown player called Michael Crabtree. And we played Texas Tech, and we played very well. In fact, to the point where they actually walked the trophy over to our side of the field. I had to leave 10 minutes before the end of the game because I was doing a January term class, so I had to fly back one day early, and the flight schedules were weird. So poor David Knight had to get in a van and drive like 4 or 5 of us to the Jacksonville airport to fly back. And when we left, we were up. And we were tuning into the radio on the way home or the way to the airport, and to our chagrin, apparently like we just vacated the football field and let Texas Tech run in. So that was sort of a heart-wrenching defeat. We lost that game by a not small margin, which I really respect the football team's ability to keep you guessing and really to surrender the most convincing of leads to truly inferior teams. It's a gift that I think is probably unique in the ACC. So that wasn't a lot of fun. But on the other hand, it was nice to get to go to a bowl game. I have a sweet fleece jacket from that bowl game. And, you know, bowls are sort of an exciting part of American football culture. And even though we lost, it was kind of cool to be a small part of it.
Whereas I was there, yeah, so first year was the Music City Bowl in Nashville. And
the Golden Gopher Marching Band.
Oh my gosh. Memories from that. So from the game itself, as far as actual plays, that has apparently slipped away from my memory. But what I do remember is, you know, their band playing, and, you know, the CMB Dr. Pease is pretty firm about when we cut off, we cut off. You don't have people noodling around on the end or showing off or whatever, and there's a clean cutoff. But the Golden Gopher Band did not have that same approach to playing, and so they cut off.
This is actually the name of the band. It's
Yeah.
the Minnesota Golden Gopher Band.
Gophers.
I'm not just saying this to mock the band. This is the name that someone voluntarily chose for the band. Carry on, dear.
Yeah, well, and of course they would have people like, give me an M, and they'd spell out Minnesota, go Gophers.
It's an hour and a half to spell Minnesota. With
Yeah,
a
it
crowd.
does. But their band, they would cut off, and they would usually have a bunch of trumpets or whatever who would just start playing, up an octave from whatever the last note was, and showing off, and just kind of being jerks, and, playing their instruments and making music into the next play. And Drew Ross was there with us to help us out. And I remember at one point he just got so frustrated that they kept doing that he did that, and sort of the same approach that we would take with Shout, where you just hold it as long as possible. He just did that, and it was really cathartic.
Drew Ross, drum corps member extraordinaire, fantastic trumpet player, awesome lead trumpet player. So these little kids were over there like tootling around like, oh look, I can play a high C. Meanwhile, Drew Ross, I wasn't there, but I have no difficulty imagining that Drew Ross probably shattered some eardrums from across the stadium. You guys got some chops.
Yep. So I remember that feeling like, yes, just stop doing it. And then for being in Nashville itself, we went out and we went line dancing and, had a chance time-wise to get out into the city and see some sights and have some adventures. And that was great. And we ended up staying, I think, almost everyone over through New Year's. We had the option to do that. So we got to have, New Year's Eve. And there was some dancing in the hotel and people were out and about. And it was just a really good time. And it was a really good trip, and that's that kind of opportunity.
Did you win that game?
Yeah, we did.
Nice.
And we had a
rare
we had the
victory.
Blues Brothers show for that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, a rare opportunity. But it was just really great opportunity overall to mix some of the best things about band. You're excited for your team. You're doing well. You're going to a bowl game. You're there to cheer on your fans and your team, and you also get to go out into a cool place. Get the opportunity to travel with, close friends and have new experiences. So that was definitely a benefit of band. That definitely showcases that, I think.